Hey everyone, Reptile Sam here. So today I've got with me Achilles, and Achilles is my pastel spot nose 100% het clown. And today's video was originally going to be about some more genes in the 8-ball complex. So if you've seen my other videos, we've done black pastel, cinnamon, and enchi. And I was going to cover heteroxanthic today, but I thought about it and I've been into reptiles for almost 7 years now. Been keeping them, and even knowing what a lot of these morphs look like, it's hard to identify a lot of them, especially even like as someone who has some experience without being an expert. So rather than kind of stumbling my way through heteroxanthic, and I wasn't going to cover Huffman, Jolt, or Razor because I don't know them well enough to identify them. I've decided also heteroxanthic, I really, other than it being a little bit lighter, because it's also called green pastel, and I think lace blackback is in there too. I could be wrong on that one. I just don't really know them well enough to talk about them. So instead, we're going to cover acid today. Now, there is the acid complex, which has a couple other morphs besides acid. It has confusion and static, which are both dominant genes as opposed to acid, which is an incomplete dominant. So I'll show you guys those in the video today, and we'll touch on confusion and static first, but we're not going to take a deep dive into them just because I'm not super familiar with them, and for all I can tell, they look very similar to acid. And so while I don't own any acid ball pythons, it's definitely a morph I would love to add into my projects. Especially when you get some acid GHI, things like that, they look really cool. So Achilles and I, who again, he's a pastel spot nose het clown, we are going to talk to you today about the acid gene. So check it out. On confusion and static first, since we're not going to really go too far into those, and then we'll get into the acid complex. So this is confusion. From 2012, so this hasn't been around super long, and it looks very similar to acid. So if we take a look at some of these pictures that people have on here, this is a confusion ball python. Okay, so you can see it's definitely like all split up from being a normal. Those alien heads are almost non-existent, and where they are, they're just like little keyholes. You can see it right through here. But this is also very similar to how an acid will look when we look at those. So for me, if I look at a snake that's either confusion, static, or acid, I personally have a hard time telling the difference because I am not an expert in these genes. So if I buy any of them, I will be going with an acid, but I want to show you guys these three genes in this complex, okay? So again, Morph Market has this awesome Morphpedia where you can scroll down and like learn about the different genes. So here is static. So if any of you guys have experience in static and confusion, I'd be happy to hear you, in the comment section below. Help me learn a bit more about the difference between confusion and static, and how they work in the acid complex. Yeah, so there you go. That's a static ball python. You can see it's not quite as broken up and jaggedy as the confusion. But outside of that, I can't see a whole lot of difference between that and the confusion, aside from the confusion having a bit more variation in its body pattern. So now let's go to the acid. And this is a really cool snake. They're going to be pretty expensive when you find them. They're the newest of the three, so maybe that's what makes it a bit different, is that it's the morph's only been around for 9 years. So this is an acid ball python, and at first glance, you might not really be able to tell the difference between an acid and a leopard. So let's get into what makes them actually different. Let's look at that belly of that acid. That's really cool. That's a really helpful to look at right there, because most of your leopards are going to have a pretty clean belly. That acid has patterning all the way across its entire body, all the way around. So even the belly area, you're going to have a really cool pattern on. Okay, so, and it is an incomplete dominant rather than a dominant gene. So the head should have a clover-shaped head stamp. Do we see that? Let's look for that. Do you guys see a clover-shaped head stamp on these animals? The body is covered in extremely irregular connected alien heads. So connected, let's look for those. Yeah, so we see over the back, each one is connected over the back. There might be a little bit of a break here or there, but a lot of these alien heads are going to be connected on the acid ball python. as opposed to having each one individually on the body. So we did look at the belly. So it has a zigzag band of black scaling all the way down, commonly referred to as a zipper, and tends to display stripes on the tail. So let's look at some of these other photos that we have right here. So these are how you can tell what an acid does. And maybe you might be like, well, I don't really want to spend a lot of money on an acid. It doesn't look like it has all that much different than some of the other more affordable morphs. And you might be right. But let's look at what happens when you add acid into some other genes, okay? So the first one we're going to look at is the sorcery, which is acid, Mojave, and black pastel. So we've already covered black pastel in this series of videos, and Mojave is a very common gene as well. So what happens when you throw acid on top of that? You get these really cool looking animals. And they're very expensive too. So let's click on this one right here, because we know that this one is just going to be a black pastel Mojave acid. This one over here has yellow belly in it, so we're just going to click on this girl right here from 2021. So she's going to be 2 years old this year. And I'm going to let that load and we'll hop on over here, okay? So this is a black acid, and you might be thinking like, wow, what's the difference between the black pastel Mojave acid and the black acid? The black acid is just going to have black pastel and acid without the Mojave in it, okay? So the Mojave is generally going to be a lighter morph. So without the Mojave in it, you get a much darker snake, okay? So with black pastel and what black pastel does to some of the shaping on the snake, acid will further break that up a lot. So let's click on this little guy right here. So that's listed at $750. There's a black pastel acid clown right there. It's a really neat looking animal. So once you add clown into acid and black pastel, we can get some really, really neat like clown black acids. Be a pretty expensive snake. There we go. So here's that sorcery that we're looking at, the black pastel Mojave acid. And look down the side. There's hardly any patterning on there at all. Like it's just this little muted little dots almost. And as you start to stack up genes, you'll get that in it. So where Mojave's going to have, this nice round keyholes, the acid mixed with that just kind of shatters that pattern all apart. But look at that awesome dorsal stripe, and that's probably from the Mojave that you're getting that really cool dorsal stripe down this snake. So if you've got $4,000 laying around and you want to pick this girl up, that's pretty wild, isn't it? You can spend $4,000 on a snake with black pastel and Mojave, which are fairly common genes, and throw acid in it, and it jacks up the price like crazy. And then if you take out Mojave, and this male right here, that's a really cool animal. He's a black pastel acid, and you can see, look how much darker this guy is. Like black pastel and acid work really well together. It's one of my favorite like 2-gene combos I've seen recently. So black pastel is going to have generally more regular alien heads, and so you see they're not connected like they were in a regular acid. But acid does really just bust up that pattern in this little guy. So really nice animal. We'll go ahead and like that guy and save it to our animals that we're saving for later to look at. Okay, acetone. What is acetone? That's just a fire acid. And you might be thinking like, wow, what is going on with these price tags on some of these acid fires? There's some valuable genes. A lot of people are mixing firefly in here, pinstripe. There's an acid axanthic. It's really cool. But if you just have a fire acid, you'll get a really nice light colored acid snake. Okay, so you can throw fire onto an acid snake and get that really cool pattern. It almost looks like an Enchi, but it's another cool project you could consider if you do have an acid snake or plan on buying one that you'd want to work with. Okay, this one is really cool. So you guys saw my buddy that I had out today, my pastel spot nose 100% het clown. And these snakes are acid spot nose pastel, and this guy also has het clown. So I'm going to click on this guy because so you saw my snake today. I have a pastel spot nose out and you saw what he looked like. And this snake right here is the same snake but with acid. And it makes the snake over $1,000 more expensive than I paid for Achilles. So I actually got a good price on Achilles from an awesome breeder named Jared Haney. Jared Haney ball pythons have some great animals, so you should definitely check them out. So look how similar this snake looks to the one I showed you guys. But when you throw acid into that spot nose pastel pattern, it's just incredible. Like it just really busts up all that pattern. You see that really beautiful head stamp, just like my guy here has. A pretty distinctive spot nose look on the face and the head. But then acid just completely breaks up that body pattern and it gives you a really neat looking animal. Very, very, very cool. Okay, and the last one I want to show you today didn't have like a fancy name for the morph, but it's an acid GHI, and it's one of my other favorite just like two gene combos. I really think is a cool combination. I'm gonna go ahead and click on the scroll right here, so you guys can get a good view of what GHI and acid can do together. And we'll go over GHI in a future video, and that stands for gotta have it. It used to be a very expensive gene. It's come down in price over the years, but it's still a very in demand, very cool gene. We believe our snake Lydia has GHI, but we can't tell because she has a lot of other stuff going on to make her almost completely patternless. But look at that. That's a very unpredictable pattern on this snake. It's super neat looking. So even this girl here has pretty much no predictability in her pattern going all the way down. There's real skinny alien heads, so some of them connect, some of them don't. So GHI is a really cool pattern gene as well. So this is a darker snake. It's really cool how dark she is. Nice little blushing right here. Very pretty animal. But when you do two really crazy pattern genes with acid and GHI, you get this really neat looking, super unpredictable snake. So thank you guys for joining me today as we go over the acid gene and what some of the cool morphs that you can make with it are, as well as touching on confusion and static. If you have any tips or tricks or ideas or comments that you'd like to talk about with these genes, go ahead and drop them in the comments section. I'm always happy to talk about these genes. Go hit us up on Instagram at reptile.sam and check out some of our really awesome merch that we've got available. Make sure to like and subscribe to my channel, and we'll see you guys next time. From Achilles and me and all the other snakes here at Reptile Sam, we'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.